Okay, we're going to remind ourselves of how to plot a cumulative frequency curve today, because that is one of the ways that we can work out the interquartile range, and it's also a way of working out something called the interdecile range, which is pretty straightforward once you've remembered your cumulative frequency skills. Here we go, we've got some data here, some heights of bushes. And we know that we don't have the original data anymore because it's been put into classes, but that's exactly what we need for this cumulative frequency curve. Okay, so off we go. Our cumulative frequency always has to go up the y-axis, so we need to label it, and we need to just work out how many squares we can afford to use. So the first thing I would probably want to do is I'd actually want to work out how many bushes we had, and I'm going to do that using cumulative frequency because that's obviously going to be helpful to me when I plot. So my cumulative frequency up to 40 is 2 bushes, but bushes that are up to 80 is all of these guys and all of these guys, so it's 5 bushes. Bushes going up to 120 is these 5 plus an extra 7, and then plus an extra 9 and plus an extra 4. So there we go, we've got 25 bushes. So how are we going to do this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't have 10, so I'm going to have to go up 5 at a time. Okay, so let's pop that in. It's better to do that because it keeps your mind nice and clear. Let's just label this as well. It's height in centimetres. Okay, so something we need to remember about cumulative frequency is that we plot at the top of each class. So starting at 0 centimetres, we're going to say we've got 0 bushes at 0 centimetres, which makes sense, doesn't it? But it would also apply the minimum and 0, minimum of your first class and a height of 0. Okay, so here the minimum is also 0, so we start at the origin. The next thing we plot at is 40, the top of that class, height of 2. Then the top of that class, height of 5, so 80 is 5. 120, and we're going to go for a 12 height. And then 160, we're going for 21. And then 200, we're going for 25. I should say 25 there. There we go. So drawing a curve is something you do need to practice. Try and make it as smooth as possible. If you don't use a sharp pencil, you will lose marks. There's just no doubt about it. So just heed that, please. Okay, so nice and curly. Don't make your curls go all over the place, but don't be afraid to curve. Okay, there we go. Not that bit of curve wasn't brilliant really there. Okay, so what I need to now do is my interquartile range, which means I want to know the middle half of my data. I want to chop off the bottom quarter and the top quarter. So 25 divided by 4 gives me 6.25. So I want bush number 6.25. Okay, we want to know how tall that imaginary bush was. So there's 6, go up a tiny bit more, go along till you hit the curve and come down there. And then to get that, so that's my quartile 1, my lowest quartile. I'm going to forget about the quarter of bushes that were the tiniest. Now what about my quartile 3? I can just triple this. So I'm going to go for the 18.75th bush. Obviously I'm using my calculator all the way here. Make sure that you do too. Don't make things harder for yourself. So here we go. So 18.75, nearly at 19. Along you go till you hit the curve, go straight down. Now let's read off those two values. Be very careful here. So that's going to have to be 100, isn't it? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares is going up by 20. So 1 square goes up by 4. Okay, so I've got 80, 84, 85, 86. Okay, and then I've got 140, 4, 8, 148. So my interquartile range is where I subtract one from the other. 148, subtract 86 is going to give me 62. That is my interquartile range. Now, once you can do that, you can do interdecile very, very easily. I just need to tell you what it means. Okay, interdecile range always means the same thing. It never changes. It means between the 10th percentile, so 10% of the data set, and 90% of the data set. So we would want to think about what's 10% of 25 bushes. So we want the 2.5th bush, and then what's 90% going to be? 22.5th bush. Okay, and I did this earlier. I did exactly the same thing. So I went along, came down, went along, came down, and I worked out a percentile, an interdecile range of about 122. So if you want to have a go at that and see what you come up with, that'd be great. Interpercentile range is exactly the same thing. It's just that they can mix it up a bit. So it doesn't mean between 10% and 90%. They tell you what it means. So I could quickly use my calculator to work out what is 30% of 25. Although some of you can do it in your heads, I'm sure, but it's the 7.5th bush, and then the 85th percentile here. There you go, that's my 85% I want of 25, which is going to give me, what would that give me? In fact, I'm not quite sure. Oh, yes, I am. It's 21.25, so I want the 21.25th bush, and I did that earlier. I'm sure you know what I did. I go along, I hit the curve and I come down. I go along, I hit the curve and come down, and then I see what the difference is between those two values. Okay, now just a little note, why do we calculate these ranges? Because we can look at two data sets. They can have similar scores like these two data sets, or they can actually have really different scores. It doesn't matter, because we can actually say there's a difference. Now this data set, the IQR is wider. I've drawn it as a box plot, and we're going to be revising those in a minute. This means it is more variable. And here, narrower, it means more consistent. So narrower IQR is more consistent. So at this point, I'd like you please to pause the video, and then I would like you to have a go at the we do. And here we have the we do. I've done the we do. How did you get along with it? So you've got some piglets. If you work out the cumulative frequencies first, you have 60 piglets. So I went up one square. I expect you did the same, and I labelled it. And then I labelled along here. I worked out that I could have 2 squares to be 10. I worked out that a quarter of 60 was 15, so I wanted to find that 15th piglet. I went along and came up with 44.5 kilograms. 3/4 of the data set is 45 piglets. I came out at 62.5 kilograms for those 2 piglets. You may have come out with slightly different things. If it's slightly different, it would get the marks. Subtract them, and your range, interquartile range, is 18 kilograms. They change by 18. Interdecile, I went for the 6th piglet and the 54th piglet, and I did the same thing going back. I cut across at the 6th piglet, went straight down when I cut the curve. 54th piglet, go down. What was the difference between those two values? Well, I found it was 70 for the 54th piglet and 32 kilograms. 15th percentile, 15% of my piglets was 9 piglets, and I found that it weighed about 41 kilograms. 70% of 60 is 42. My 42nd piglet weighed 60. So my interpercentile range was 19 kilograms. Thank you very much for watching.